And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is Kara Goldin. She's the founder and CEO of everybody's favorite water, which is Hint. She's best known for her award-winning Hint Water, which is the leading unsweetened flavored water, and she is now the author of Undaunted. She's an active speaker and writer, and she has her own podcast, which is Unstoppable with Kara. And she interviews founders, entrepreneurs, and other disruptors across a variety of industries. She lives in the Bay Area, and you can follow her on all her social handles at Kara Goldin. So here we are. Welcome. So you are now officially a first-time author. Congratulations.
I am. Thank you. I've been in the works writing this for 4 years. So I was finally excited to actually get the physical copies of the book, and It's pretty awesome.
So here's the secret. Your friends will now all think you're like 20 or 25 IQ points smarter because you've written a book, and I won't tell them if you want. You will get treated a little.
Oh, come on. They all think I'm smart, right?
Well, it's smarter. You can always be smarter, right?
So, well, it's funny. I was a minor in finance, and I had two roommates who were not minors in finance or majors in finance. And so I used to get the Wall Street Journal every day.
Right.
And so they decided it would be really funny when I was in college, because I said, don't throw out my Wall Street Journal. I'll read it this weekend. So I had stacks and stacks. So they wallpapered my bedroom and in college, and with the Wall Street Journal one weekend, probably with a few beers in hand.
At least a few. Yeah.
Yesterday, I was in the Wall Street Journal and had almost a page. And so the two of them just think, they just think they're so funny. They're just going on and on about, reminiscing about, we knew that eventually she'd be in the Wall Street Journal because we were wallpapering her room with the papers long ago. So
and make sure they don't sneak into the house, right?
I know, right?
Keep the nest on and watch out for them.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
So let me ask you this. You clearly weren't sitting around one day going, hey, I'm running this world-renowned company. I got a bunch of kids. I need something to do to fill the time, so maybe I'll write a book. That probably wasn't how that went down, was it?
No, not at all. In fact, I knew a bunch of authors, but not really like entrepreneurs that wrote books. And I didn't even look at books that were out there and think like, oh, I can do this better in some way. For me, it was almost therapy, like to write a lot of these stories down, because I was out speaking, and sometimes people would, give a comment like, enjoyed your talk, but by the way, you have a lot more courage than I do, or you don't have doubts, or you've never had failures. That's not my story. And I was like, wait a minute, like, that's not true at all. Do I look like I'm, super confident and that I don't have fears or all of these different variables?
Well, the real vulnerable stuff, right? So I think, there's really two types of books that could have just been a speech and ended there, right? Yeah. And then books like this that actually there's not enough to get it across in an hour or 45 minutes. So talk to Kara 3-4 years ago that was about to write this book, and tell her the difference between what she expected and how it played in terms of a process and what it took.
Yeah. So I think more than anything, I started writing. I wasn't in a hurry to get this book out, and I was writing for 4 years. And so last year in June, I had an agent, which I had like 2 years in, and I just decided now it's time. And my poor agent was like, why now? Like, you've been writing for 4 years. I'm like, I'm done. Like, I just need to either get it out there or put it to the side, because our company was really in a hockey stick, and and there was a lot going on, and I really wanted to see if there was like a market. But I also started hearing more and more about really this need that I felt out there for an entrepreneur to come out and actually share that it wasn't like, one day I was zero and the next day I'm big, right? Like, I felt like there was this like white space in there where I'm like, people actually need to hear the hard stories. And in particular, not that this is just for female entrepreneurs, but I found there aren't any operating CEOs that I could find that are writing books that about about sort of what it was like to grow the company while they were still at the company. There's a
Right.
lot
So
of
that was part of why I was asking is usually most operating CEOs are sitting around going, geez,
No,
this week is full.
what
Next
do I
week is
do
full. Next
Yeah.
month is full. Board meetings, raising money, driving the business, blah, blah, blah. Oh, great. Let me take on this other side project that'll consume another chunk of my bandwidth. So what was the motivation? What were you know, you said it took 4 years, but what motivated you to say, because you could have stopped, right? Nobody
Yeah.
wasn't like, this is how you need to make a living, but what motivated you to say, I need to do this. I need to get this out there?
I think it was just consumers like wanting to hear my story. I mean, ever
Okay.
since we started this company 15 years ago, the thing that has really driven me to keep going so many days when, life gets hard,
Yep.
you have a meeting with a retailer and it didn't go the way you wanted, or with an investor or
Yep.
potential investor or whatever. And I would get these emails. I mean, daily I get emails from consumers who are saying like, I love your product. You've helped me drink water. I heard your story today and you made me realize that I can actually do this. And I thought, wow, that is the key thing that I heard over and over again, from consumers around the Hint product was help. And then I was actually
Mm-hmm.
hearing it about my own story and how it helped people to actually believe that if I just go try, maybe I can actually make some progress. And so that was the key reason why I said, I can go and take these 4 years worth of a journal and actually turn it into something.
And how much of, or how would you split the beneficiary, if you will, because you benefit, right? As writing this, it's cathartic, it's a forcing mechanism, et cetera. But it also is incredibly beneficial to the brand. I mean, there isn't a bigger, I don't mean this the wrong way, commodity than water, which you decommoditized and
Yeah.
branded amazingly in an incredibly competitive market. But adding the storyline to it, like how does that sort of support the brand?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think entrepreneurs' advantage, especially, I mean, really in any category, but especially in the beverage industry, is actually the story behind the brand.
Right.
And, and so we've continued to use that story to actually help people remember,
And
right?
you are the face of the brand, right? And unlike, if you're an entrepreneur in a B2B cloud-based technology, whatever, there's a CEO, but there isn't necessarily a CEO like there is in a consumer product that is the face of the brand.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I don't think it's limited to just B2C. I think it could be B2B. When you look at, businesses that are, Salesforce, I mean, Mark Benioff, I mean, saw this hole in the market and why there was a need. I mean, I think he has told this story. Does he
Sure.
still continue to tell the story? I mean, maybe not as much or not in the same way, but I really do believe what people remember is the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's bizarre when you have a story, but you don't have people. Like sometimes people are doing that. They say and I'm like, why don't you actually say who? Every childhood story that I remember actually has a person, right? Or a character, maybe not a person, right? But it has a character in it. And so again, I think that yes, I'm the face of the brand, but I think it also started with my story and it's very authentic. Mm-hmm. Consumers remember this. And I mean, I remember the first time that I really felt like we were doing the right thing, around telling the story. I was in St. Simon's Island, or just off of St. Simon's Island at the Cloisters in Georgia. And it's really where we founded the peach flavor. We were just eating a lot of peaches. It was Georgia. It was so great. And I remember sitting out by the pool and I had a bunch of bottles of Hint. And this woman, I was talking to my daughter, and this woman came by and she said, hey, where did you get those bottles of Hint? And I said, just down the road at the store, Harris Teeter. And she said, I've been wanting to try it. I had seen her on How I Made My Millions. And I said, really? And of course, my daughter is,
chuckling,
12 at the time, horrified. She jumps in the pool, runs away from me. And I said, tell me the story. And it was amazing how she told the story. And then she said, I got to try that product, because just hearing her story of how she started in her kitchen and she did it to solve her
Now,
problem.
did you take off the hat and like undercover boss her?
No, I mean, I have red hair. Like I'm fairly, I think, like easy to recognize. She had no idea who I was. But the classic at the end, my daughter comes back and she's like, did you tell her yet? And the lady said, what? And she said, and I, looked at her sort of awkwardly, and I said, oh, I work for Hint. And she said, oh, what's that lady like? And I was like, oh, she is so awesome. I mean,
That's cool. I can go on for days. Right. If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts. Let's jump forward, and it's a year from now, and all your dreams come true relative to the book, whatever that means. So what does that mean? What does success look like for the book? Because there's different. I'm always fascinated by this, because people can measure it by book sales, by impact, by conversations that start. What does it mean for you?
So I've never even understood like the book sale number, to be honest with you.
Nobody does. Yeah.
What I'm hearing right now is, 2 weeks prior to launching, it's doing pretty well. I mean, really well. Like which is amazing. But having said that, I didn't sit there and do it for any other reason than to actually really help people. So I think in a year from now, if I start getting the same emails from people letting me know that I lost my job during COVID and I was really feeling stuck, and I read your book having no experience in an industry, and I was able to kind of get out of the gate, knock the walls down, then I believe I've done something. I was talking to an editor yesterday on the phone who read the book, and it was interesting because she said, I read it. I get given a lot of books.
Sure.
And she said, but I found myself going back to a few different things. For example, I went to the somewhat famous Arizona State University, and and I talk about in the book where I didn't actually learn that there was anything wrong with my education until I moved to New York and happened to get a job at Time, and which is very lovely place, incredible product, but filled with a lot of people at the time who were in Ivy League schools.
Yeah.
So I thought, when I got there, they all liked me, but they all wanted to know how I got a job here. And I'm like, I just went into the HR office and I got a job. And then I started realizing that I couldn't actually change that piece. I had gone to school somewhere. It was all good. Yeah. And all I could do would be actually to deliver. Right. And so what was classic is I had management coming to me and saying, do you have any other friends who graduated from Arizona State who you want to recommend for roles? Like within
So
one
I love that, because, early in our careers and even pre-career, all that stuff matters so much. And then the dirty little secret is, once you get out in the real world, you're more, there are exceptions, judged on who you are, what you do, what you accomplish. And how many people do you know that have worked for you for years, or colleagues or friends or neighbors? You have no idea where they went to school, if they went to school, because it's not relevant to,
totally. So that was like another, so this editor had said to me that she had gone to a state school and same thing, like she landed there and, she's just a few years out of college. And she said, I've thought about the same thing that you wrote about, and you have really inspired me because you're a few years older than me. And you've said, she doesn't care anymore. She owns it. Right. And she's fine. And she said, you really gave me hope. Thank you. Like those kind of things. Again, it's a book about building Hint, but if I can actually share those stories to help people get rid of their doubts, get rid of their doubters, here's what you might want to say. Like,
so
to people.
What about, or has it crossed your mind that it could also be used, again, going back to sort of Hint a little bit, as talent attraction? Like, wow, I've read your book and I want to work for you. I've read your book, and like there's all these other things where it just, books sort of take on a life of their own. And one of the things I love about the work I do in books is there's the self-selection piece, right? I can give someone a book. The odds of them opening or not are one, who knows, right? The last data I got from Amazon said the average business book, nobody gets past the 18th page, which is depressing. But when someone comes to you and says, hey, I read your book, it's sort of, there's a secret handshake of, I dig your stuff. I know you. I think I understand how you might think or what you're about or your values and all that. And it's sort of a secret handshake of a way to expose your sort of values and persona and grit and all that other sort of fun stuff.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's not only great for recruitment, but look, I share with people all the time that we may not be the culture for everybody. I think like the danger of actually coming into a company like mine is that I've actually worked in a lot of different cultures. I know a lot about culture, like working at Time, which, had its culture. Then I worked at CNN. Ted Turner drove that.
So you went from Jerry Levin to Ted Turner, right?
Well, not Jerry. So I mean, at the time, I mean, it was really, it was just a culture of very Ivy, very
old
small,
school.
Yeah, always wearing a suit. And then all of a sudden I went over to Ted Turner, who was like, it was on the other end of the spectrum, and it was crazy. But it was also things like screaming at people in hallways for doing something wrong. Like that would have never happened at Time. On the flip side of things at Time, as my boss used to say to me, and I always share this with people who will listen to me, the younger generation in our company, where boss used to say, judge people on what they do, not necessarily by what they say, because sometimes you're working in a culture where everybody's nice, right? That doesn't mean that they're on your side.
It's called the Midwest, right?
Right. Well, and it could be that too.
Could be cultural from a geographic perspective as well.
But another thing I talk about, and never look back and say, wow, that was a waste of time. That was a stupid thing. Like I actually, when I then built my own company, I have a culture of, I don't love meetings. Mm-hmm. I basically say, if you want to do a meeting, then you need to tell people why they're doing a meeting. And otherwise they don't have to come to your meeting. It is not the standing meeting thing is like.
So let's talk about that from a culture perspective. So there's a reason you came to that. You were on the painful end of not having choice earlier in your career and had to go to these meetings and sit there and watch the paint, dry, or do like I did and look around the room and go, okay, 17 here, average hourly rate this. Wow, that was just a waste of 10 grand or whatever. But so now it's your rules, your game. Meetings need to happen, but they don't need to happen at 2:00 on Tuesday because somebody years ago said we have a 2:00 on Tuesday meeting. So I would imagine you have a culture that says, if we're going to meet, we have a purpose, right? Yeah. And if people don't come to your meetings, that's on you, right? To say, totally. Well, Peter runs a crappy meeting. I'm not going to his meeting. That was a waste of my time.
It's a waste of your time. And I think that, you start to see people declining your meeting after a while. And then you start to say, well, maybe I need to reboot this meeting or cancel it because people just don't need to come to the meeting. I mean, I remember. I was going to
say if they get the hint, but I can't say that here. Right.
I remember really thinking about this some years back. A great person came to work at Hint, and she had been at Frito-Lay for years. Sure. And it was constant standing meetings. Yeah. And she said to me, it's so great. Like I actually get out of the office by 5:30. Like it's amazing. I can go on a run. I can do all this stuff. And I was like, how many meetings were you in? And she was like, oh, we started meetings at 9 a.m. and didn't get out till 3. And then I was like,
when did you do the work?
Right. And then I'm trying to they're all my boss's meetings, but she said it's crazy because I actually want to have some kind of downtime along the way.
Which is where the creativity comes from. And I mean, downtime is so not overrated. It's not, I think it gets a bad brand by calling it downtime. It's actually refresh time. It's actually when the brain sort of reboots itself. So as we start to wrap, give us a couple of closing thoughts on why someone out there might choose to take the path that you did and go for it and write the book, and why you might not. Because it isn't for everyone. It isn't something for everyone.
So are you asking the path of being an entrepreneur or
an author? This is a new one for you.
Okay.
No,
Yeah. So, I think very similarly to how I thought about actually starting Hint. I am not the type of entrepreneur or the type of author that would have written a book if I actually saw that one was out there that was similar.
That was similar to what you were doing.
I sort of think this term is overused, but thought leadership around doubts is one piece of it, but also that somebody can actually look at as kind of a mentorship, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody that kind of gets them out of the gate. I mean, I was on another call earlier today and somebody said to me, do you think I need a coach? Do you ever, I mean, that's kind of a topic that a lot of people talk about today. Like like everybody's got coaches, right?
Yep.
And I said, what problem are you trying to solve?
Exactly.
And she said, I don't know. And I said, figure that out first and figure out if that's what it is. And, you know,
how would you know what coach to hire if they did a good job, if you're making progress? Is it you're hiring a coach because it's, you know, everybody got a Maltese, so you want a Maltese like that? I love that.
Exactly. And so
what are you trying to accomplish?
Right. And so I think so often, even there's books like mine that actually help you to think about like, okay, I just read this book, Undaunted, and, you know, what I've realized is that I have problems building up this wall in front of me, or I should say knocking down the wall in front of me, that it's hard for me, you know, to do that. So I don't know if it's a coach or a therapist or whatever. I mean,
somebody.
Yeah. I mean, I always, and I don't think it's just about business too. I think it's just about being an athlete. I have a niece who was a professional soccer player, and for a while she had a huge problem. She thought she couldn't do something, and she went to a sports therapist, and it basically rewired her to actually know that she could. Yeah. And I've thought a lot about this too, that I think we get in our own way so much of the time, and we rely on our friends and family who they don't want to see you hurt. So they'll agree with you when they hear you doubting. They'll just feed the fire, right? And they'll just tell you. And so I think it's just at the end of the day, you have to be strong enough to figure out how to break that down, and that's hopefully what the book does.
Cool. Well, I appreciate your time. I wish you the best on the book.
Thank you.
And congratulations on entering the world of published authordom. So.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And and if anybody wants to reach out, I love to hear from people. It's Kara Goldin with an I, and I would love to say hi.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.